As I mentioned a moment ago, Prime Minister Scott Morrison has declared this national emergency. It'll be put into practice formally on Friday. It applies to Queensland and New South Wales, and it helps to cut red tape and improve communication between agencies as they go on the flood recovery process. Steph Cooke is the New South Wales Minister for Emergency Services and Flood Recovery. She joins me now from the Sydney CBD. Thanks for joining me, Steph. First up, the lack of this declaration, has that hampered anything you've been trying to do in the flood response so far?
Well, certainly as I've spent time up in that Northern Rivers region for the last 7 days, a lot of time, what I've been hearing from people on the ground up there is that accessing that very vital support that they need at this time, the $1,000 per adult and $400 per child, has actually been really, really difficult to access, and in some cases it's taking up to 7 days. That's a really, really long time for these, for people who have really absolutely lost everything. And so we're hoping now that a reduction in red tape and greater cut through will really allow those people to access the support that they need and deserve at this time.
Well, apart from bad weather returning, this is the recovery phase. This is the issue now. I know there's shelter issues, there's medical issues, there's just getting cash and supplies and power to people. Could you let us know what are the biggest challenges in northern New South Wales right now?
Yes, there's no doubt that we're facing enormous challenges on a number of fronts up in the Northern Rivers region. I think undoubtedly the biggest challenge is really looking after our people at this time. They've just been through so much, and I think a lot of people that I talk to are battle weary. They went through the 2017 flood. A lot of them came out of that. They rebuilt to the 2017 level. That's now been washed away by more than 2 metres of additional floodwater coming through the town. So there's a lot of people that are feeling very vulnerable and fragile at this time. And so making sure that we wrap around them, getting them access to the help and services that they need at this time is really important. And to that end, we've stood up already 6 recovery centres. And that's a fancy way of saying we've got this one-stop shop where we've got a number of government agencies, where Centrelink are also set up, some not-for-profits, as well as all of the New South Wales government agencies that people can access by going to one location, and they can move around from, desk to desk, talking to people about what they actually need at this time. So in my mind, that's probably the most important thing that we do to make sure that people feel as though they're supported. The second thing, of course, is the actual clean-up itself. And I think we must remember when we're having these discussions about cleaning up a town of that size is that people's whole life and every belonging that they own has been really badly impacted by this, and a lot of it is now sitting out on the street. So it's important that we clean that up quickly, but that we do so in a very delicate and mindful way to make sure that people understand that we know that this is a really difficult time for them, and that there's nothing that they have done. They haven't done anything wrong, that this is something that's happened to them, which is quite extraordinary at this time.
But it happens time and time again in a place like Lismore. It happens time and time again. Don't you need to ensure that people have the option to rebuild elsewhere, higher up, off the floodplain?
Oh, these are absolutely discussions that we need to have going forward. There's no question that the people of Lismore and those outlying areas have been through so much over so many years, and those discussions will absolutely need to be had about planning in general in that area.
Now, just briefly, criticism of the emergency response. I found it astonishing, actually, and nothing's going to be perfect, but people asking why civilians, mainstream Australians, were rescuing each other. I just can't understand why you would expect otherwise. Here's the Prime Minister on that point today in Lismore.
Who do those people blame?
What I'm going to do is thank those. This is about thanking those who, in the midst of that disaster, were able to be first on the scene. But in any natural disaster, everyone has a role to play. And the suggestion that it is only the governments that are involved in an emergency response, I don't think the community agrees with that, by the way, and they certainly showed that by what they did bravely.
It's just common sense, isn't it, Minister? And we see that through any natural disaster all the time. We help each other out. Was the biggest mistake in this immediate disaster response, the advice that went out from emergency services for people not to go out and help. You're actually telling people to stay away.
Well, I'm not sure that it was a mistake at that time, Chris. I mean, we had a very fast-moving situation up there and a very dangerous situation emerging where there were power lines that were becoming quickly found themselves underwater. And we actually found ourselves, being the emergency services and the SES, found themselves rescuing very well-meaning citizens who then themselves found themselves sort of in a dangerous situation, caught in power lines, etc. So I think that we acted on the best advice at the time, given the circumstances that we were facing. But to look, for my part, all I can say is a huge thank you to the community for backing in behind the SES and the other emergency services organisation. It really, truly has been a partnership between the emergency services and the communities up there. And I've spoken to so many SES members over the past week, different units, and all of them agree that this wouldn't have been possible without the support of the community, and
Absolutely.
They themselves are very, very grateful.